All right,
Oh, goodness.
so
Are we almost all
we're,
here in
this is
person?
it. Yep, I'm going live, so on.
Sit down,
I think the PA is already on. It is. I'm live,
All right,
we're
are we
good.
live?
All right, Amy, you can let everybody in. It's
Yep.
much appreciated. All right, good evening, everybody. Time being 6:32, the February 14th public meeting of the Master Plan Committee Public Outreach. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
This is a wonderful way to show we love our
This is
town.
a great way, this is our heartfelt way of showing the community how much we care. So, a couple quick things to state. The meeting tonight will be held at the Municipal Building Town Council Chambers at 355 East Central Street, tonight at 6:30. A note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. The meetings will also be live streamed by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Recordings of meetings are available on Franklin TV's Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel. Additionally, in an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The link to tonight's meeting for February 14th, 2024 is listed below. Meeting link, click on Zoom or copy the URL. The call-in phone number is 1-929-3092. I have the number backwards, I apologize. Right here. Here it is. 1-929-205-6099 and enter meeting ID 8724-5992-405 and then press pound. That number once again is 1-929-205-6099 and enter meeting ID 8724-599-2405 and then press pound. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda for tonight is just a quick introduction by myself. My name is Glenn Jones. I'm one of the town councilors. I'm the chair of the master plan. Tonight is one of our first open public meetings to introduce the master plan committee, as well as the planning department and Bader and Barrett, our contractors for the master plan committee. I'm going to start off by introducing Amy. Amy is from the planning board, and Amy, if you would like to start off tonight's meeting and then introduce Bader and Barrett, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amy Love. I'm the town planner for the town of Franklin. I'm kind of helping out the committee on developing the master plan. We've also hired consultants, Beta and Barrett. With Barrett, we have Jill, who will be presenting tonight. With Beta, we have Jeff, and he'll probably do a few of the slides as well. And some of their co-workers are on Zoom tonight as well. So thank you very much.
Very good. So we'll get this presentation started. And just before I introduce Bader and Barrett and have them speak and give the full presentation, I'm going to just read the Master Plan Committee charge. Amy, if you could bring up the first slide. Thank you very much. So, per Town of Franklin Resolution 23-07, the Town Council has established the Master Plan Update Committee to update the 2013 Townwide Master Plan. The committee is charged to review the current master plan and its existing plan documents, data, and achievements. Also, to identify the key issues facing the community in the next 10 years. Assist in the identification of existing conditions and conduct trend analysis. Recommend goals and objectives related to Franklin's future. Develop a clear action plan for the town of Franklin. And then finally, to make a final report to the planning board within 18 months from the date of the ratification of the committee of members. Beta.
Move on to the next one.
Yep.
All right. So we're gonna, I believe Jill's gonna be presenting this.
Jill? Go right ahead.
Yes, good evening, everyone. For the meeting agenda tonight, we're going to go through an overall schedule of the master plan project, plan progress to date, a high-level overview of key issues and opportunities, that we're just uncovering now, and that'll be part of the public engagement process, is to hear from the master plan committee, as well as the public, to see if we're missing anything and to find out what's most important to the town of Franklin, as they chart the course for the future, for the next 10 or so years. And then we'll go into an overview of the subcommittees and the work that they're doing, and then some time at the end for question and answers. All right, the master plan process overview. In general, you can think about it in kind of three parts. The where are we now? In that part, we have pretty much completed. That's the initial assessment of baseline conditions. Where's Franklin now? And we did a lot of research, interviews with different departments in town and organizations to collect information, and developed an inventory and assessment report, which I believe there is a link to that on the website. And the town also did a community survey to get some input from the community. The phase that we're kind of in now is considered focusing. We're focusing things, looking at issues and opportunities, goals, and a vision statement. And then that kind of addresses where do we want to be in 10 or so years. And then kind of the fun part, and what everybody kind of looks forward to, is figuring out how do we get there. And that will come in the form of an implementation plan, which includes goals, policies, which policies can also be called strategies or objectives, and actions. All right. Here's an overview of the project schedule on a quarterly basis. And this kind of gives you a more detailed look at the different phases of the project that I just went through. And then this is on a monthly basis, which we like to keep the master plan committee as updated as much as we can with like where we've been, where we are, and where we're going with these detailed tasks. So the town and the master plan committee knows what their responsibilities are, and we as the consulting team know what our responsibilities are to support this project. Okay. Plan progress to date. As you probably know, there's been master plan committee meetings that have been held. Glenn knows better than I and Amy, but at least monthly, I think oftentimes twice a month. The master plan committee has been meeting. They've also have subcommittees that you'll hear about later, and those subcommittees have been meeting in between the monthly major master plan committee meetings. The master plan committee and the town staff have done some tabling events. There's been a bike tour, a community survey, and the inventory and assessment report. Okay, so in key issues and opportunities, which will be delivered to the master plan committee in a few weeks in the form of a report, we're giving a high-level overview of that tonight. And the information that we use to come up with these talking points of what for each element of the master plan have come to our attention to be issues and or opportunities. Sometimes they're both. We've got those from stakeholder interviews, information from existing conditions report, some of the subcommittee meeting minutes, and from the community survey. Okay, and when I just mentioned the elements of the master plan, there are 8 elements or chapters that we are looking at in terms of Franklin now and Franklin future under these categories. And they're economic development, housing, land use, natural, cultural, and historic resources, open space and recreation, community facilities and services, traffic and circulation, and sustainability. And many of these elements are interrelated. And that all comes out in the master plan process, how they're interrelated, how one affects the other, and then we come up with ways to make progress and chart the course forward for the town, acknowledging where everything is and where the hopes are for those elements. Okay, for economic development, again, this is a high-level overview of issues and opportunities. We've identified 4 major ones. Downtown Franklin represents both issues and opportunities for Franklin. Attracting and retaining businesses and visitors in the downtown is currently hindered by parking and traffic issues, some rundown storefronts, inaccessibility by biking or walking, high commercial rents, and a lack of shops and casual cafes or restaurants. The town has already done a lot to support the revitalization of the downtown, and stakeholders identify this area as one where they would like to see continued planning, investment, and development. Through the implementation of recommendations from the Franklin for All rezoning project and the MAPC market study, and continued collaboration with groups like the Franklin Cultural Committee and Franklin Downtown Partnership, the town has the opportunity to make downtown Franklin a vibrant destination downtown. Labor force and employment-based mismatch. What this means is that most residents rely on external or regional employment opportunities. While Franklin's employment base offers some high-wage employment, most residents do not work in the industries that provide the majority of jobs in town, namely manufacturing and wholesale trade. Capacity. Franklin has capable town staff, partnerships with the Downtown Partnership and Cultural District Committee. Franklin's recently completed economic development work through the MAPC market study and the Franklin for All. Economic incentives for businesses. There's economic opportunity areas and priority development sites in Franklin, and these all facilitate local economic development. Redevelopment. The town has opportunities to redevelop underutilized commercial and industrial properties and Superfund and brownfield sites. For example, in 2023, Franklin was awarded $500,000 by the EPA to support remediation of the former New Style property, a critical step towards eventual redevelopment of the site and continued investment of the Grove Street corridor. All right, housing. One of the things that we've gathered so far is that there could be a need for more intermediate housing. And intermediate housing refers to housing at prices and rents above those of publicly rented, but below private housing prices or rents. The current housing prices in Franklin surpass the state average, highlighting the necessity for additional intermediate housing options. A mix of housing alternatives is also something for the town of Franklin to consider moving forward. Continuing to provide the appropriate mix of housing alternatives that meet the needs of Franklin-based employment. Communities with a variety of housing options enable people to remain in their communities as they age or their financial situation changes by staying in their home or moving to housing in line with their changing needs. And what we've found from the work we've done so far is that Franklin actually provides a relatively nice variety of housing for residents compared to surrounding towns. But there could be a need for additional mix of housing types. Zoning. Something to maybe consider as a opportunity is changing downtown zoning to be partially residential. So those who own businesses in the area can also live in the area as well. More 40R housing development in Franklin would help bring a more diverse community to the town and help grow local business opportunities. And then on the topic of affordable housing, based on the analysis of demographics, household income, and the housing market, the town will need additional affordable housing units in the future. The number of affordable housing units available for residents with low income does not seem to be sufficient for current local and regional demand. More affordable housing ideally would be available either in newly developed units or more readily available in already existing apartment complexes or residential zoning areas. And part of this would be to include education to residents about the benefits of affordable housing, to decrease the stigma surrounding it, and to highlight the benefits of a community that provides housing for all. Land use. Zoning and downtown Franklin. Land use policy in Franklin has generally or historically been reactive to development, and zoning regulations may be restricting development that the town desires. This was noted by stakeholders in this process and the Franklin for All project. Downtown Franklin, in particular, represents an opportunity for the town to be more proactive in its planning and readdress dimensional requirements that restrict multifamily and mixed-use development in the downtown core. Local Historic Preservation Overlay District. While the town has designated 2 local historic districts, Franklin has not established a local historic preservation overlay district. Stakeholders mentioned an overlay district as an opportunity to further support preservation efforts in Franklin and creating additional guidelines for redevelopment and renovation of historic properties. And we have definitely heard and noted, the pride that the community feels in the history of the town of Franklin and some of the very unique connections Franklin has to the history of the area. Franklin faces the challenge of balancing needed growth and development with other goals like expanding protected open space, historic preservation, and retaining the town's small town character. Stakeholders often see at odds with growth, how to protect that small town character, and how to manage future change. Land use planning and zoning will play a critical role in guiding future development that supports Franklin's vision for its future. Okay. The town relies on groundwater for public water supply. So naturally, an environmental concern is both the quality and the quantity of water supply. While relying on water for public water supply presents environmental challenges or concerns, it also offers opportunities for the town to continue to implement proactive measures to protect and manage this vital resource effectively. Invasive species management is something that we came across, and this is typical to, I think, most every town these days, how to manage the invasive species. And this could be through collaboration with stakeholders, habitat restoration, volunteer programs, green infrastructure planning. Accessibility to resource areas and sites. Franklin has a wealth of natural, cultural, and historic resources, and on the next slide we'll see open space and recreation resources. And one thing that we have heard from the stakeholders is to continue to find ways to improve accessibility to the open space areas through accessible pathways, signage, in various ways for everyone to be able to access and enjoy these treasures in the town. So accessibility to natural resource areas presents multifaceted opportunities for Franklin to enhance the town's economy, quality of life, environmental sustainability, and community resilience. Indigenous history. We have heard that the town has a connection to a number of indigenous tribes, but it seemed as if more information or knowledge was desired to learn a little bit more about the history and to try and incorporate it within the open space and natural resource areas where there was a connection, to be both a way to celebrate that heritage, to educate the public. So an opportunity is to build on Native American education and engagement, build a relationship with indigenous people that have the connection to Franklin. Embracing this history as an integral part of the town's identity and heritage presents opportunities for cultural enrichment, economic development, environmental stewardship, reconciliation, and social cohesion. Wildlife. Wildlife in Franklin presents challenges to open space and water bodies with issues such as beaver structures, including dams leading to flooding and obstructed water flow. I think in 2022, there were 18 incidents related to beavers, requiring either their lethal removal or dam breaching in various locations across Franklin. Additionally, specific areas with ponds or lakes face reoccurring algal blooms, adversely affecting the local wildlife population and diminishing the overall attractiveness of these areas to residents. And that's through probably surface water pollution loading, which could be related to fertilizers on the lawn and so forth. So we're seeing the connection between some water quality, best management practices, and how it affects wildlife and enjoyment of the outdoors. Okay, next slide. This is the last slide I'm presenting, then you'll get to hear a different voice. Open space and recreation. A balance of preservation and development is that issue and opportunity. In areas of significance to Franklin's ecosystem, there's a need to navigate the balance between public access to open space and recreational facilities and safeguarding the natural environment. Striking this balance is important to preserve the ecological integrity of the area while maintaining Franklin's overall appeal. Open space and recreation access. Many open space and recreation facilities operate on a near full capacity. This conveys an ongoing need to expand both indoor and outdoor spaces to accommodate more participants. I know there's been a recent open space and recreation plan, so we encourage the town through this master plan process to lean heavily on that document for the goals, strategies, and actions, because I know a great deal of outreach was done specifically in regards to open space and recreation. Which leads me to the public outreach and engagement. Members of the open space and recreation effort have successfully utilized Instagram, Facebook, Farmers Market as effective platforms for communication and public engagement. This initiative has enabled the expansion of communication channels through social media leverage and disseminating information at community events, thereby educating residents across all age groups. Future planning. The town officials created the 7-year action plan as part of the 2023 Open Space and Recreation Plan to guide the town. So again, we have an opportunity to in this plan acknowledge the work that has been done and to encourage taking those recommended steps to continue to have and bring Franklin's open space and recreation to where the folks of town would like to see it 10 plus years from now. Local practices and policies. An opportunity is to continue to utilize the Community Preservation Act, the CPA funds that allow a percent of resident taxes to be put toward local preservation of open space, historic sites, and affordable housing. A recent example of CPA utilization is the town successfully acquiring Schmidt Farm in 2022. It's a valuable piece of land spanning over 100 acres, and it's to preserve the legacy of agriculture. The town secured these rolling fields and forested areas using the CPA funds. Thank you.
From Beta Group now, I'll discuss a little bit about our community services and facilities. Don't worry, folks, we only have 3 slides left on your issues and opportunities. For our community services and facilities, a lot of the issues we found were spatially related. That includes adding more space within the town hall as staffing numbers increase, more training areas for our fire and police departments. The other thing that we noted is that a lot of these actions are already taking place within the town of Franklin. A lot of our issues and opportunities really connected with each other, specifically in this chapter. This is included in the planning process for the new police station, for reuse of the Davis Thayer School, and lots of opportunities here for growth spatially within the town. We also wanted to see an increase and continuation of the funding for sustainable technologies, both in the school system and within the town hall offices and beyond for running municipal services within the town. And one important thing that was brought up, especially amongst the school districts, was a need and want for more collaboration between the schools, between the campuses, and across town with parents, teachers, and faculty. We were really lucky in completing specifically this chapter that Franklin has a pretty robust team monitoring our emergency services, our water resources, solid waste, et cetera. So we're very lucky to not find as many issues as you might consider for community services and facilities.
Yeah, I'll talk about transportation. So transportation, overall goal is to provide safe, efficient, equitable transportation system for Franklin's residents, businesses and employees and visitors. And everyone deals with transportation, and transportation section deals with all modes from traffic to to trucking, to pedestrians and bicycles and transit. So we deal with all those modes. So several issues we've identified and heard from residents and stakeholders in the committee. So safety is always number one priority, and it's no different here that we would identify, potential solutions, or we call them countermeasures, at high crash locations. And this applies to all modes and all people of all ages and abilities in town.
In a meeting.
It's not just it includes high crash locations, but we also include other locations that people may have issues with, even if they don't have a high crash rate. So we try to be all inclusive with that. And there are new initiatives at both the state and federal level that we can rely on to pursue additional funding for those. There's high congestion areas in town. I'm sure most people are familiar with these on Route 140. Around the schools, could be, downtown. So those are critical areas. We look at reducing congestion and vehicle delay. Sometimes it's hand in hand with the safety issues. Opportunities. We heard a lot that people are interested in non-automobile improvements for connectivity, mobility, and safety, for new sidewalks, trails, and path in town. Your departments, DPW and planning, has done a great job advancing these. Some examples are the shared use path on Grove Street, phase one. There'll be a new sidewalk, on Washington Street, and many others through programs like the Complete Streets Mass DOT program. So we look to even increase, those facilities in town in the future. There is some transit service in town, particularly for seniors, and we heard a lot that people would like to expand that level of service and frequency in town. So that's something we look at identifying strategies. And then lastly, identify improvement grant funding. The town actually does a great job of this already, and we'll help them identify new opportunities for funding through MassDOT and FHWA for transit, traffic, and pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And I'll hand it back to Emily.
This is our final section before turning it back over to the committee. And this section, sustainability, really ties into the entire project as a whole. It has its own chapter, but it is not only talked about within this chapter. We found some issues where we were lacking in maybe some public education and mitigating climate change, which is true everywhere in the Commonwealth. And being able to increase public education specifically about climate change, but also about those water issues, even the beavers that we discussed earlier, will be really important going into the next 10 years for residents and visitors and workers within this town. Our opportunities include things that the town is already doing, like Jeff said, which is seeking sustainable programming funding and using the plans that are already in place within the town to ensure that actions are being completed to help make the town more sustainable in both a regulatory manner, so maybe updating zoning laws, things of that nature, but also in a literal manner, shifting energy over to more sustainable methods. We're also looking for more agricultural partnerships with the local farms in town, which we also touched on earlier with those partnerships, and incorporating more agricultural and specifically permaculture techniques into the design standards for the town. With that, I will turn it back over to the committee.
Thank you very much. Good presentation. My apologies. Clearing my throat. Now what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the various subcommittees that were established by the Master Plan Committee as a whole to address the various content areas to which we are responsible for. Just by way of explanation, excuse me really quick, we are actually required by state law, General Law, Part 1, Title 8, Title 7 of Chapter 41, Section 81, as a community to actually develop a master plan to which we need to eventually, once complete, present to the planning board of our community as well as the town at large, based solely on the public input. Just by way of explanation, according to Section 81D, under the Master Plan Economic Development Supplement, we are required to meet certain elements, land use element, housing element, economic development element, natural cultural resources element, open space and recreation, services and facilities, circulation, as well as an implementation program. And what we've added in is a sustainability portion. So in order to meet the requirements that are listed here for these content areas, we've created 5 subcommittees. The first subcommittee is Housing and Economic Development, which is chaired by Kenneth Elmore. The second committee is Community Services, Facilities, and Circulation, which is chaired by Kobe Frangillo. Third, Open Space, Recreation. Now we've combined these two together. And Natural and Historical Resources, that's actually 3, which is chaired by Meg Hagan. And then we have Land Use and Zoning. So this is actually a combination of both land use and the zoning, which is chaired by Janelle Lang. And then, of course, Sustainability to help meet our future goals for sustainability, and that's chaired by Gino Carlucci. So what I'd like to do now is pass it over to our first committee, who's going to be introducing himself as well as his various chair members, and then give a little discussion about some specific questions in their overarching goals. Apologies. Bring that up. So first, we have Housing and Economic Development. Over to you, Ken.
Yep, sure. Ken Elmore. I'm over at 29 School Street. And we've been doing a lot of what you've heard, and that is the assessment, and we've gotten great work from our consultants here. The next step for us, and if you'd love to join us tomorrow, tomorrow at 5:15, we will be looking at the 2013 goals. In terms of looking at those, we'll be looking at those things that we should keep, those goals that we should delete because they've been taken care of sufficiently enough, goals we should advise, and then those that we should add based upon the issues that were outlined and the values that you heard that Jill and others talked about, particularly around economic development and particularly around housing. Our goal is also to try and get in front of, or at least to get some conversations with various town advocacy groups, committees, businesses, and organizations to further look at some of the goals that are there. And also to ask ourselves some larger questions about where to go over the course of the next 10 years. Big questions, and you'll see right here that other members of the committee are Kobe Frangillo as well as Rick Power, who's here. If you go to the next slide, please. And here's some of those key questions. And again, these are not necessarily a laundry list of things, but they're more to think about what we need to consider over the course of the next few years. Changed landscape that COVID and a whole lot of other things have done. And we've got to think about what that means for living space, for workspace, and also for business. Remote work is one of those sorts of things. There was some conversation about work and the changing nature of the place. How are we looking at those aspects of it? And then what's more, there are emerging economies in and around Franklin that will affect our working and living circumstances. And as we think about housing, as we think about economic development, as we think about all the things that are complementary to that, how does that all work together? And what should the values be going forward? But what's more, what should be the few but major goals that we would like to recommend for Town Council? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think, Amy, the goal of these slides ultimately was to take opportunity for each subcommittee to propose these questions out to the public, or do we want to wait till the end?
We can probably wait to the end, maybe get through the slides, and
Okay.
then we can always retract back.
Come back to
some
the,
of them.
okay. Next up, circulation, services, facilities, and community services. Kobe Frangillo.
Yeah, thank you. So this is what I think people refer to as the best committee. The Community Services, Facilities, and Circulation Subcommittee. It's a pretty wide scope of what we're looking at. Community Services and Facilities is everything that the town does, from safety to schools to IT to the clerk, our roadways and DPW, animal control, library, all of this is under services, and then certainly every building that we own and every park that we own and parking lot are under the facilities. And then circulation is everything that has to do with how people move and goods move around Franklin. That includes the roadways, but also our pedestrian, bike, and transit systems. I chair this committee, and I'm joined by members Ken Elmore, Aaron Gallagher, and Janelle Lang. In addition to reviewing the goals of the 2013 master plan, we've put a large effort into trying to get to every department and as many facilities as we can in person. And so we had a bike tour where we visited a whole bunch of facilities in the same day, and were able to meet with heads of each of the departments. We then went to the senior center where we were able to sit in on a GATRA public hearing, as well as meet with senior center officials. We just finished meeting with the town engineer and learning about circulation and how we currently approach roadways. And we have an upcoming meeting with the facilities director to get his perspective, a deep dive on facilities. From there, I think we'll start doubling back on some people that we've met with, but might have questions as we start to scope out our goals and objectives. If you go to the next slide, we got our key questions, and this is broken out. So the first one is community facilities and services. Main questions are: how should Franklin's service offerings expand or evolve given changes in both technological capabilities and community needs, right? So how is technology changing the way that we expect our local government to interact with us, as well as how are the needs changing and what we expect of our government? And then in terms of facilities, how do we improve long-term planning, right? We really want to be proactive about particularly the financial side of what we can expect, and making sure that we're getting ahead of it and we're not getting blindsided by any facility needs. So what are the short, medium, and long-term needs with our facilities? And then on circulation, if you go to the next slide, really wanted to think about a few things. I think as was already mentioned, there's an understanding that circulation is not just about vehicular traffic, although that's certainly going to be an important piece of what we're visiting, but it's how people move around Franklin, and very often that means where are there spaces where we can make it safe or enjoyable, or frankly better, to get people out of cars and walking and biking, which lowers our vehicular traffic and makes the town more connected and enjoyable. And so sort of looking at the balance there, as well as, and related to that, how does the way that we move around the community impact prosperity, economic development, vibrancy, as well as general livability, right? The way that you feel on a daily basis is very impacted by the way that you move around your community. So those are some of the key questions that we're going to be considering sort of as we look to build off of the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobe. Next up is Open Space, Recreation, Natural, Cultural, and Historic Resources Subcommittee. Meg Hagan.
We take the bid for the longest name subcommittee. So for our overarching goal, as we have the longest name, we are touching also a lot of different things within Franklin that we're looking to impact. So our overarching goal, as you can see, is a bit long. So we're really looking at maintaining and preserving our open spaces in our environment in Franklin. So that's looking at maintaining our current parks and open spaces that we have, in addition to looking at plans for future use of the property that has been purchased through CPA funds, looking at Schmidt Farm and Maple Hill. We're additionally looking at enhancing accessibility. This came out as a key factor in the open space and recreation plan that was the 2023 plan, and due to length of approval process is now the 2024 Open Space and Recreation Plan. But through that process, accessibility became a huge factor, and so that's one of the questions we'll talk about in a minute. In addition, we're looking to enhance public information about our open spaces. A lot of the conversations that we've had so far with the public seems to be that not only for open spaces and recreation, but also cultural and historic resources, is that there isn't enough readily available information that a large percentage of the public really knows what's there. So that's one of our key objectives for going forward, is being able to figure out ways to actually provide information to the public in an accessible way. So I am the chair myself, and along with our members on the subcommittee is Glenn Jones, Melanie Hamblin, and Rick Power. So looking at, for the next slide here, natural, cultural, and historic resources, our key questions here are looking at our CPA funds, so the Community Preservation Act. What historical and natural preservation projects should we prioritize? We'd like to actually be specific, like with this actual objective in question with everybody, and would like to know from the public what are the key resources in town that they would like to see prioritized for preservation going forward. Additionally, we'd like to see how the town of Franklin can best reach the community for this public outreach and education around open spaces and natural, cultural, and historic resources. We found from feedback both through open spaces, through the OSRP plan, and through the community outreach that we've done so far with the subcommittee, that everyone gets their information in a variety of ways. And so we're looking to find out what are the best ways to reach the largest number of citizens in Franklin. Where do you go for your resources? Where are you looking for information, so that we can make sure that we're getting all of this information for public outreach and education to the majority of the town. And next slide, please. So then looking at our open spaces and recreation and our key questions here. So similarly, looking as our previous questions, we're going to look at priorities here and what should we actually prioritize when we're looking at accessibility for our open spaces. We have an abundance of open spaces in Franklin, which is an amazing opportunity that we have. So what are the key places that you would like to see actually made accessible for all people? In addition to that, how should we preserve our open spaces and improve our long-term native habitat restoration on the long term? And then considering the additional approximately 200 acres of newly purchased open space that I've already mentioned through CPA funds, looking at Schmidt Farm and Maple Hill, how should we prioritize adding amenities to these town-owned recreation and open space areas? Not only looking at the CPA purchased properties, but in addition to our already existing properties, how would you like to see these things prioritized? And that is it for me. Thank you.
Great job. Thanks, Meg. Next up, we have Land Use and Zoning Subcommittee. Over to Janelle.
All right, good evening. It is my pleasure to chair and introduce the largest, and some might say most important, subcommittee.
It's a little competition.
It's a little competition.
It's friendly. Our overarching goal here is to fulfill the land use and zoning related goals of the people of Franklin, which is a little bit less tangible than housing and economic development and open space. But I think there's two key reasons why this is important and worth paying attention to, and why we have such a big group focused on this. Number one is that having appropriate land use can really further the goals of all the other subcommittees. You know, especially there's some things, a lot of tie-overs related to housing and economic development, and so we're working very closely with everybody on the master plan committee. And secondly, when folks are thinking, why did the town do that? How did that get approved? You know, why did this board make that decision? It sort of ties back to the master plan, sets the foundation and the recommendations for then what goes into bylaws and amendments and studies that are done. And so then this is the opportunity for residents to collaborate with this committee and the town on setting these goals. So those are some tangible things, I think, that land use and zoning can you know, why that's such a key part of this study. Oh, just quickly on our members. So I'm chairing this group and working closely along with Gino Carlucci, Erin Gallagher, Joe Halligan, Bruce Hunchard, and Jennifer Williams. Our key questions. How might we encourage responsible development that enhances the character of Franklin while activating underused areas? This ties into, Jill from Barrett mentioned it earlier. It's in the Department of Planning and Community Development's mission statement. This is really, how do we strike that balance between responsible development, smart growth, allowing the town to thrive while maintaining its character? And secondly, what areas in Franklin could benefit most from reimagining their current land use, and how might these adjustments positively impact the people of Franklin? We want to ask the why are we doing this? Why would we make recommendations for rethinking areas of the town before we dive into the how? That's sort of the implementation part of the master plan will be how do we get there? How do we, why do we want to do this for the next 10 years, and how do we get there? So that's how we see these. There's a lot of questions related to land use and zoning, but these are two important ones.
Excellent. Thank you, Janelle. Moving on to the Sustainability Subcommittee, which is chaired by Gino Carlucci. Gino?
Thank you, Glenn. Joining me on the committee are Melanie Hamlin and Eric Stelter, who are also here tonight. And our committee gets the prize for the shortest name, one word. Might need to make a deal with some of the other committees to take over some of those long names. So our overarching goal, as shown up on the screen, is to recommend adoption of policies and practices to ensure long-term environmental, economic, and fiscal sustainability. So again, it's not, sometimes people think of sustainability as solely environmental, but it's really beyond that. And while all the topic areas, as Glenn mentioned in the beginning, are interrelated, I think sustainability in particular has impacts on every single one of them significantly. And I would say that sustainability also falls into two main categories: mitigation and resilience, particularly related to climate change. You know, we need to take whatever steps we can to reduce our impact to hopefully slow down climate change, but at the same time be prepared to address the impacts of it, particularly with things like flooding and heat. Franklin, I believe, is projected to increase the number of 90-degree days to like 40 by 2050, which isn't that far away. So things like tree canopies, maybe more assistance for people who need help during extreme weather events, that type of thing. Our key questions on the next slide, as I sort of touched on, how can we best reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and align with the state goal. The state has very specific climate change goals to be net zero by 2050. We would like to participate in that and help as best we can, and at the same time improve environmental and economic resiliency in an equitable manner, by the way, not so that benefits and burden are distributed evenly in our efforts. And finally, I just would like to plug that our committee will be available tomorrow morning at the Senior Center at 8:30. You don't have to be a senior to attend. It's also, we tied in to the regular third Thursday state and local officials time, so you kind of get two things for one visit at the Senior Center tomorrow morning. We're there to answer any questions and take whatever input you might have. Thank you.
Great job, Gino. Thank you very much. Next slide. So this is the part of tonight's presentation where we finally get to throw out some of these questions to the public as a whole, since this meeting is an open forum for the public to give us some feedback on many of the questions that various of the subcommittees have posed tonight. What I think I'd like to do is, Amy, backtrack to housing and economic development. And I would like each chair to pose one of the questions on their list and give each subcommittee an opportunity to ask one of each question that's on their list, and then pose it to the public for input. That sound like a fair thing to do?
Can we say that's fair, but if anyone in the public wants to address another question, that is also an option? through the chair?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Here, here.
All right. So Ken, I'll throw it back to you.
Just go with the first question, and anybody can fit in whatever they'd like.
Yep.
There's a changing landscape in the country, and certainly in Franklin, much of it affected by COVID, whether it be how we work, how we go to school, how we play, how we learn, how we set up living spaces. And I wonder, how do we, in that changing landscape, still continue to thrive? If you look at the 2013 master plan introduction to the housing and to the economic development spaces, two different spaces there, it talks about a very vibrant, thriving community, sets of communities around us as well. And that was 10 years ago, and I wonder if that's still possible, and how it has changed, and what are some of those things that are going to be very important, given all the crisis sorts of things that you just heard about housing and economic development. So, long way to get to that first question.
All right. So the first question you're asking is how best to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the town and the residents.
Is that what I'm asking?
Is that the first?
So that's my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How does Franklin thrive?
I think that's a part.
No, I didn't
That's
change
a part of the thriving too. is
My
greenhouse
apologies.
gases
My
as well.
apologies. I was
part
so
of it.
foolish I didn't change my own slides.
It's right in front of us.
So let me go right back to it. All right.
That too.
That too. Let's go back to that.
There's everything,
All right.
right? Anybody has something to
Is
say?
is it possible for people just to come up and say their piece or
Yes,
ask
that's
questions?
absolutely.
And it doesn't matter,
Yes, that's absolutely. So what I'd like to do is invite the public up to give their input on any one of the questions that's been posed from the Housing and Economic Development Subcommittee. This goes out to the general public here in the audience. If you'd like to come up, or anyone in Zoom land, raise your hand and we will have you say your input on any one of these questions.
So we're particularly looking for thoughts on housing and economic development at this point.
Yes.
If anyone has any thoughts on housing and economic development that they want to share, possibly prompted by the questions in front of you.
and through the chair, I'm looking for input. I won't respond very much. I'm just trying to take some notes here.
Okay. So let's see. Anyone out in the audience that would like to address either how does Franklin thrive in a changed landscape for living space, work, and business, or has remote work created an impact on housing and business in Franklin, and can Franklin leverage an emerging innovative economy?
Is it worth noting that for the introverts, you can send in chats, or in the room, there's Post-its and stickies and papers if people want to write down their ideas too.
I just have a question. So
Yes.
how do you define thrive?
Thrive.
What does that mean? It's
I'm-
such a
I'm-
lofty word, so what do you mean? Does it mean thrive in that the family is home together? Or so it's just a very...
Through the chair?
Yes.
I pulled that word out of the 2013 master plan. It's in there a lot about a thriving community in Franklin. And it talks about some of those sorts of things that we would imagine with thriving and vibrancy. Communities, a community where people are able to move around freely, where it's easy for businesses to exist. So I kind of pulled from that because I had that same question, and I think it's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think it's that, quite frankly, the heart of what master planning is and what this whole thing is about is what do we mean by a thriving
Right, and
community
thriving
in the
for
next 10
you know,
years?
Thriving for, you know, my son and daughter who are in their 20s means something different than, you know, somebody who's in their 30s and 40s, 50s with kids, and then with, you know, people who are over 60. So those things mean different things, and the population is, you know, is different in Franklin, right? So you probably couldn't get, you know, my 22-year-old to, you know, sit down and focus and answer those questions, but he's going to be coming up. So I guess it's one of the things really for me is, you know, thriving is, is this plan for 5 years? Is the audience for this plan, you know, which segment are we, and how do we make that, how do we address that?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
I think that is an excellent question, and I hope that that is a fundamental question that we argue about, debate about, and talk about as part of a overriding preamble to what this master plan should be about.
Good question. And I'm sorry, ma'am, just for the record, name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
Do I have to do that?
No, just for the record.
Amy Johnson.
Thank you.
Addison Ave.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate your questions. All right. Since we don't seem to have many questions in regards to housing and economic development, hold on, we have them. Sir, name and address, please.
Rich Frangelo, 140 Maple Street.
Hey, Rich.
I didn't intend to come to the meeting tonight, but here I am, and so now we're talking. When I think of housing, what I think is the biggest challenge is that it's difficult for children of people in this town to stay in this town. The prices of and opportunities for places to stay are just harder and harder. And I was fortunate to buy a house in the town that I grew up in. This is not so easy for my children to do. So what I would hope would be part of this is to accept the breadth of housing options that would allow people to stay. And likewise, at the other end of the spectrum, those who have lived here for decades, who want to stay and want to have some independence, what can they do? And it's very hard to move from a house that they've had for 50 years into a smaller unit that they can afford. And that's a very big challenge. So now maybe you're talking about accessory dwelling units or something like that, other ways to provide housing for people who both are coming up into their 20s and maybe are downsizing in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
I completely agree with you, sir. This is a true story, and this is just kind of back up what you just said. When my wife and I were looking for a place to live back in 1998, I grew up in Watertown. My wife grew up in Rosendale. My mother and my father built our house, a small cape, in Watertown for $18,000. And by the time we left, the value of the house was upwards of about $440,000, which it was completely impossible for myself and my wife to live in the city. It was completely unaffordable, which was why the number one reason why we moved out here to Franklin in the first place back in '98 was because of the affordability. Ironically, that's changed. Once again, it's almost made it impossible for anyone who lives in their hometown to stay in their hometown because there just isn't enough affordable housing stock based on the general income of the community to keep the youth here. They just end up having to go further out west or even just leave the state altogether. It's an impossible task to tackle with the way inflation is going and the cost of housing is going up. It's a conundrum. I mean, just a few weeks ago there was maybe 2 houses on sale in the town of Franklin. So, we have a couple of hands online, and I'm going to go out to the audience. Anyone else in the audience here in the chambers before I go out to Zoom? All right, as our chairman of the council would say, anyone out in Zoom land have anything to say? So here we go. Mark Unicelli, excuse me if I spelled your name, if I said your name correctly, sir. Name and address, please.
He's muted.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, hello.
Hello,
This is,
sir.
this is Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive in Franklin. Well, thanks to everybody for the presentation tonight. I think this question might apply to more than one of the subcommittees, or my comment. And it has to do with Ken's comments about how COVID, for example, has had impacted the number of people who were working remotely, using Zoom, for example. And then when COVID ended and people started getting in cars again, it occurred to me how it immediately brought back some of the difficulties of if you were commuting into Boston or close to Boston for your job every day, what a pain that is to try to deal with all of that traffic and how much time people are spending on the roads. And being a commuter rail community, I wonder if we can try to think about ways to more strongly leverage the fact that we have the commuter rail stopping right in two locations in Franklin, right in the downtown area as well as further out. What can we do to leverage that better, to make it easier for people? And Ken, on your slide here, you talk about emerging innovation economies such as life sciences. A lot of those life science industries are taking place in the Boston, Cambridge, Somerville areas right now. Trying to commute in to those locations is extremely difficult today, and I would imagine it's just going to get worse when commuting by car. So are there things that we can do better in the future to more highly leverage the fact that we have the commuter rails coming right through Franklin, right into the downtown area, for example?
I think, Mark, you're going to find that Mr. Frangillo, who is the chair of circulation as well, is going to be posing that question again. And your question is valid. I think that falls under circulation, and it all has a major part on our economic development of our community. I see one more person had their hand up. Was that
Bruce?
Bruce?
Bruce.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just got a comment. I think that Mr. Frangillo's question was more about Kobe moving out of the basement, kind of a subliminal message for him to do that.
Well, Mr. Chair, the last three comments, maybe the final one, the fourth one, again, go to a bit of those questions about thriving in a changed landscape.
Right.
Landscape was very different when you or I were living and doing all those kinds of things. It's a changed landscape.
It's certainly.
We've got to really deal with what that means and how it works.
If I could just rename, I'm happy that I'm able to live and give back to a community because we were able to add an accessory dwelling unit, and I would love for more people to be able to experience that and move back to the community that they grew up in and love.
And on that note, I'm just going to leave with a thought about housing for just a moment, just as I was driving through the city again today. One of the things that clearly stands out as you drive through the city of Boston is that somewhere in the past, somebody came to the realization that they had to accommodate or provide enough housing, so therefore the city or the state stepped in and built affordable housing. There is plenty of it throughout the city, scattered throughout the various communities, and those are locations where people can still, hopefully, find it affordable to live in the city. But at some point, they realized they had to really address the overpopulation issue and the under amount of development that there was. So therefore, they created some form of affordable housing. That's something that we need to definitely continue to have discussions with, both as a master plan committee, but especially as a town council as we move forward. All right. Any other questions or comments or input in regards to any one of the three posed questions for housing and economic development? No.
We
All right.
have Paula Lombardi.
Oh, Paula Lombardi. Perfect. I'll go to Paula. Just name and address, please. Thank you, Brian.
I think she's on mute.
Nope, Paul, you're muted. I can't quite hear you. Just. Nope. Can't. Can you unmute her, Brian? Or
No, we can't unmute.
Okay.
You can ask. Yeah.
Mute.
nope. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Just name and address, please.
My concern is, I know we need housing, but what bothers me is the size of the buildings now that their suggestion, like Grove Street, a 5-story buildings, 5 of them, where there's no sidewalks. The traffic is, a heavy, there's a lot of truck transportation on that particular road there. And it's near 4 of our wells and Beaver Pond area too. The resources, I feel that, I know they keep saying that we have enough water. I worry about the, just how much capacity do we have at the Charles River Pollution Control to handle all of this new building that is proposed or are going to be proposed, in the future. And especially there's an overpass there on Beaver Street. And we have a transfer station there. And if you're having 1,000 or 1,200 units there being proposed at this point, how is it going to handle it? Because we have 2 railroad crossings, one on Grove Street and one on Beaver Street. And if you're on Beaver Street, near Beaver Pond, and the traffic stops on that, and if you're the impact of more cars going on that, at that speed, residential cars, that I think there would be such a bottleneck going through, and especially with emergency vehicles if they needed to go there. My other concern, I did mention about the water resources there, the drawdown. On the other part of town, we have a new Stobitz is going to be developed too, another, 240-something units. We have the existing one that's being built by the Big Y, a multifamily one, and it's all near one of our major wells, which is well number 9. Also, I hear that there might be another development going, on Summer Street too, which would also be an impact there, drawing our water resources. And then we have down by East Central Street, near DeVita's Market, the old DeVita's Market, more capacity too. And in the future, there's St. John's. They're going to be developing their projects there downtown. There's more buildings that are being proposed going up. I'm just wondering at what rate is everything going to be monitored, or is it, and most of that too is going to be on sewage, town sewage. Just how much capacity are we allowed, because we're one of 4 towns, and then we have off of Prospect Street on the Bellingham side, there was information in the newspaper about a week ago saying that the only way that the one off of Lake Street, which is another 200 and something unit, that their access road would be directed to Prospect Street, which is a scenic roadway, and that is our future recreation area. But Prospect Street is a scenic road, and it is heavily traveled now. Residents come from either the Bellingham area or from the Woonsocket area, skirting that, coming down Prospect onto Washington Street, which then goes on to Grove or to the other industrial park. And it seems like everything's coming at once. And how is it going to be managed, I guess, within, in naturally having all the, this new housing and everything, we have to, think about schools, because I don't know how many, people will be in each unit. But things like that, not to mention environmentally, I think there are, other than beaver, there are deer, in some areas around Franklin still there, and other wildlife, plus other vegetation too that's being wiped out. Plus, I know they say that the fire department, they have a new, or they're ordering a new vehicle that can handle multi units, the aerial ladders, but at the same time, you're going to have to, I'm sure, build another building for that to house that vehicle too. So that's my concern out there. It's not that I'm against growth, but at the same time, when it seems to hit all at once, that's, and something that, 5 stories really bothers me.
Thank you, Mrs. Lombardi. I've noted many of your concerns, and you can rest assured that myself as a counselor and the fellow counselors are addressing many of these issues as the community continues to grow. We have very close tabs on the water usage, especially the wells. It's always one of my major concerns, as well as addressing the sewer issues with the new building of our Beaver Street Interceptor, and always doing our best to try to retain as much open space as possible in order to prevent overdevelopment as a community as a whole. Thank you.
One of the other things too that concerned me was if these larger buildings are being built, are they having balconies on the the higher the level? Are they still allowed to have balconies and be able to grill outside? Because I think of any sparks or whatever could, especially in the Grove Street where there are the forest area there too, that, the higher up, it's unfortunately, if there were any sparks or whatever, could fly off. And,
from what I've seen of those plans, I do believe it's approximately 300 units they're looking to build. It is 5 units, but I don't believe it has any balconies that I recall of that on any one of those projected buildings. So I don't believe that's the case.
It's heard and considered.
Definitely.
We'll look into it.
We will look into that, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? All right, so we're gonna move on to Community Services, Facilities, and Circulation Subcommittee. Kobe, on any questions that you may want to pose to the public.
Yeah, to me, the most interesting one here is, are there services that aren't currently provided or could be expanded on as you see it?
And we'll pose that to anybody in the room first. No? All right. Then I'll throw it out to Zoom land. Anyone have any questions or any input in regards to Kobe's question?
Cool.
Any input from the public tonight? Nope. Kobe? we have another? Oh, sure. Sorry, just name and address, please, again, ma'am. Sorry.
And I won't be at every meeting.
That's okay, just for the record.
Amy Johnson, Addison Ave. I just wanted to say, you know, the services for the Franklin Library are tremendous. And, you know, really, really enjoy the library, the senior center. So I think there's probably, you know, more we need to do, but there's been a tremendous effort and such professionalism, and really should be very proud of those places. You go, you get very good advice, and, you know, everybody's very helpful. So, I don't know, if people aren't using the library, they should go.
Definitely. Thank you.
Hells yeah, thank you.
Did you have anything on circulation?
Yeah, that circulation. Are there key areas where you feel particularly safe or enjoy moving around Franklin, or areas where you feel less safe moving around Franklin the way that you'd like to?
So, anyone in the audience? I'll go to you first in regards to the key questions for circulation. This kind of circles back to what the gentleman said earlier, Mark did, about how exactly do we improve ways that people get around the town. So, you know, that's a valid question that I would love to pose to anybody in the audience as well as out in Zoom land, because as the young lady said earlier, we're going to run into some issues in the future as far as traffic is concerned. We're already running into traffic issues. Ultimately, we'd be keen to reduce the amount of vehicular traffic and create ways to get around the community in better, safer pedestrian and or, you know, mopeds, and bicycles.
Bikes.
We do have
Oh,
one.
we do have one hit. All right. Perfect. And this is Ally. Name and address, please.
Hi everyone, Allie Rayum,
Hi.
47 Summer Street. Good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
And the one piece of awareness I think of here is especially with all of these departments and subcommittees, I'm thinking of accessibility, of course. And I know that numerous crosswalks, especially in the downtown area, feel very unsafe to a lot of people. They're either not obvious enough because they're beautiful with like the brick color and everything, but they're not very obvious for cars to be paying attention to driving, but yet still know like, oh, there's a crosswalk right there. So I think of the one actually right at Summer Street, like to cross over to Birchwood, for example, or the other really big crosswalks on that main street that, again, they're just not as obvious. So my question would be, how can we make them more obvious and more safe? I don't feel safe using them because I don't have the ability to run or jump out of the way if somebody's not stopping. Like I may be using a mobility device or just be slow and not have the mobility in general. So I'm just wondering, how can we improve that for safety and accessibility?
Great question. Kobe?
Yeah, I think we're in listening mode, but certainly going to be considering that. And yeah, thank you for continuing to advocate for accessibility. I think that needs to be a priority of this master plan.
Thank you, Ellie. We're actually going to add that to our list. It's one of many areas throughout the community that ultimately needs addressing as far as crosswalks and pedestrian safety is concerned. It's always been one of my major concerns, considering I live about 2 blocks from there myself, and we want to make the downtown as accessible and safe as possible for pedestrian traffic. Thank you. Mark? Mark again? Just
Yes.
name and address again, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow
Thanks.
Drive. I just want to second what we just heard about accessibility around the downtown area. I think that's really important. I have other comments to make as well, but since that was brought up, one of the things that I've noticed, and if we look at the picture right now of this wide brick crosswalk area in front of the post office, when it's dark at night and rainy, that is a very poorly lit area. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised that there haven't been more pedestrian issues with some of the crosswalks in the downtown area at night on wet nights. It's really hard to see who's in front of you on those streets. But the points that I wanted to make on circulation are, and Kobe, I know I've spoken with you briefly about the GATRA bus system. I think GATRA is maybe underutilized and maybe undercommunicated resource that's available to our community. I think if more people were to know about GATRA or some similar form of transportation, that could help immensely connect people to the downtown area that live further out, or help people avoid the use of their car, or help people that don't have the use of a car during the day get to important appointments. So I'd love to see GATRA or something like GATRA increase in usability. And I'd also, I don't know if this counts as circulation, but just kind of nearby circulation in the downtown area. Can we consider making part of the downtown area a pedestrian-only area, for example? So to eliminate the interaction between cars and pedestrians. I think downtown Franklin is kind of uniquely set up to make it easy to consider making part of that area a pedestrian-only area. So I'll just leave those thoughts.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate your input tonight. Thomas, and I can't see your last name. Such? Just name and address, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Name and address, please.
Hi, Thomas Such, live at 79 Populatic Street. So regarding the question of where you feel less safe in town, I just wanted to make mention of, I feel lucky to live over on Populatic Street because it's a very beautiful section of town, kind of in the Charles River. But I did want to mention that in the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years, with the addition of the Brandywine development, the Silver Fox development, and the Eagles Nest development, there's been what I've seen is a marked increase in traffic on Populatic Street. The traffic is, the speed limit is listed, I believe, in sections as 20 miles an hour, as well as whatever, I guess, the normal town speed limit would be for a residential area. But there are no sidewalks on Populatic Street. And so I would designate this as something where I feel it's a little bit less safe now because of all of the increased development along Populatic, with just the addition of cars. So just something I want to throw out there as a concern.
Thank you, sir. We've actually we've added that to our notes, so we'll definitely add that for the public input for tonight. Thank you so much for saying your piece. All right. So I think what I'll do now is shift gears, move over to open space, recreation, natural, cultural, historic resources. Over to Meg. Meg, I didn't know if you wanted to tackle just natural and cultural resources, or if you wanted to touch base on open space and recreation. Your choice.
For everything. Can I do, yeah. I'm going to kind of do one from each, so if that's okay with everybody. One of the things that we've talked about, which does touch both of them, is this bit about reaching the community and public outreach. So if we're looking at giving information about our open spaces, about natural, cultural, and historic resources, where do you get your information from? How can we reach you? How can we make sure that you have access to everything that the town does have to offer? And then I'm throwing in the second one because this is a high priority for us in general, is how can we prioritize accessibility in our open spaces? Which open spaces do you want to see as prioritized for being accessible? So those are my two questions.
Okay. So we'll throw them out to the audience first, here. If anyone has any input on those questions.
I think the town website is good, and it's been getting better and better. The email updates are awesome. So maybe Twitter or, other you know, type of applications, but, you know, which pushes things or you can subscribe to. But coming from the town website. So like, I just think that that's a good way, as well as all the different community groups that, you know, have their, you know, if you have the Girl Scouts, maybe they hand out a little pamphlet or something, but,
If you were to have a number one place that you get your information from, what would you say yours is?
the town website.
Town website?
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's good.
Mr. Chair?
That's good to know it's working.
That's a great question. Is there any chance we could poll the audience a little bit on it? If they participate?
Sure. Well, let me throw that I'll throw that question out as a general question to everyone in the room as well as on Zoom. What is your number one or preferred way to get communications from the town of Franklin? That's to everybody, or anyone who has anything to say on the matter.
See a few hands
Yep,
going up.
no, that's good. Mark again? I'm sorry, we were on Zoom. Mark?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. The website is definitely the best way that I get information, and I would just like to give a shout out to what I think is one of the best practices on open space. There is a document regarding Delcart Recreation Area that I think is an outstanding example of how you can give a lot of great information to the public in a concise way, and it's located right on the website, right where it should be. I'd like to see us sort of repeat that document for more of the spaces that we have.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
That's great.
That's great, Mark. Thank you. Tom?
Yep, Tom Such, 79 Populatic Street. I also agree it would be the town website. That's how I get all of my town information. And I don't know, maybe I don't use it as frequently as others, but I find it to be a little difficult to navigate. But I'm still kind of learning my way around it. So, but I do find that to be the most convenient way to find things.
Thank you, Tom. I think you'll find that the website that you see today is actually a significant improvement from just 6 or 7 years ago. We did a lot of hard work here in the community, in the town administration, to improve our efforts to reach out to the community through our website, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and other resources as well. I see Ally.
Yeah, Allie again. I agree. I also use the website. However, I also benefit from promptings to guide me to the website through email and social media. And I'm including within that would be Steve's Franklin Matters or Alan's paper, those various resources.
That's great. Thank you, Ally. Anyone in the chambers have a comment on their number one way that they would get information from the town? Or preferred way to get communications from the town?
Jim Davin, Oxford Drive, 85 Oxford Drive.
Hey, Jim.
Just some general feedback. So yeah, I think the town website is excellent. It has improved a lot, but I think all of these things overlap a bit. So I think there's an opportunity to have it be more of a push instead of a pull. So through social media, the sports in town, Franklin Recreation Department, through the school, getting a lot of school communications. It could say something about, just a reminder, here are some open space, some recreation opportunities within the town this weekend. Try to get outside and enjoy that. So weaving all of these things together, because yeah, it's on the website, we can go and find that, but outside of, this is a bit of my work, but search engine optimization, it's not always as easy to find it that way. So the more diverse and the more opportunities to reach out through the schools, through sports, through the senior center, through the food pantry, anything that gets prompts out there so that people see that and are reminded, okay, yeah, we do have, Delcart, and we do have these opportunities in town, and then that would drive them to the website. So there's more of a blend of that, where we get to the point where there's so much that's on the website and, oh, you have to go find it, but we need, across all demographics, we need reminders from time to time. Hey, this is out there, keep this in mind, you know, it's gonna be 60 degrees this weekend. Here are some things where you can look with your parents through the school, or just anything to be like, okay, you know, there are resources available. Go to our website, give feedback on that, and then try to expand it that way so it's getting a little bit more broader impact instead of just people that are going to that as a single point of contact for the town.
Can I ask you a couple of questions while I get you?
Yeah.
How did you find out about tonight's meeting?
That's what kind of prompted me to get up, is through IG, Instagram.
Instagram?
Yeah, so I saw, there are some other things that have come up tonight, including, I live off of Prospect Street in the Bellingham, Prospect Hill, dumping all of the cars onto Prospect Street and all of that. So there's a bunch of overlapping things, but what caught my attention was, okay, master plan, come and hear from all the committees, be a part of the town of, grew up in Franklin, been here for 50 years off and on. I was in Bellingham as well. But with that coming closer to home, it's like, okay, I need to be more aware of what's happening, obviously in Bellingham and in Franklin. And I saw this, and just the way it was presented on Instagram, it's like, here's a master plan. Here are all the things, and an opportunity for this, for questions and answers. I could have stayed home and got on Zoom and listened, but I'm primarily here because I saw it on Instagram. It was like, here's what's happening.
That's great. That's great news to know. Which brings me to the next question, is if through additional avenues of communication on behalf of the Master Plan Committee, as well as the town at whole, if we were to choose a historical and natural preservation project, out of all the amazing things that are in the community, which one would you give, number one, would you prioritize?
Well, great question.
Because with many things, more than likely something you probably are frequent. Delcart tends to make it in the top 10.
But primarily, and maybe it's recency bias, but the Schmidt farm.
Schmidt.
Just because of the fact that, you know, I had worked with John Schmidt, he did a home improvement 20 years or so ago.
Yep.
But just the fact that so much is changing, and that is an opportunity to preserve that space. All this space is being gobbled up. Prospect Hill is taking 75 acres and transforming that. What used to be a scenic carriage trail is now, as we've heard other people mention, it's a cut through from Woonsocket. All of these things. So that is something that I think would be a priority in terms of, here's an opportunity that's coming up. I know Ryan Jetty and others are involved, and many people are involved in this, but here are some opportunities while we're on the early stages of this. How could we best utilize that space for everyone? If you want to go hiking, go off of the trunk line trail, go over there. If you know, is it worth having like a bike area or just open space? Like, what would people utilize? A sitting area so people could just go, just be outside. Trying to get the maximum use of that land property for everyone. Obviously, it's a natural resource, but I think there are other opportunities in terms of like a community, having farmers market or just different things to drive people to go down there. Have, you know, things like that where you're just giving more opportunity for people to say, oh, I should get out of the house and go down there. Have Girl Scouts there selling cookies. Have
So not to put you on the spot, but if we were, I know really, no, don't worry, I'm going back to the public again. If we were to put together a subcommittee or a committee or an ad hoc committee of the council, the town as a whole, in regards to specifically addressing the future of Schmidt's Farm, would you be willing to participate in, say, a committee or put your input in on what that property may inevitably turn into? Sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's part of why I think this is such a huge thing.
I think Glenn just voluntold you.
His email address, Glenn, his phone
It's
number.
Valentine's Day. So.
Yeah. Valentine's Day.
But yeah, I think that's a huge opportunity here, is that myself and others that are on Zoom and things, it's you feel like there's an opportunity to come out of the shadows, come out of being a resident of the town, taking my kids to sporting events, doing
Yep.
things within the town and getting more involved with it. So yeah, I'd definitely be part of that.
Thank you.
Um,
I appreciate you taking your time tonight.
Sure. And there's just one other thing, try to keep it brief here, but I noticed a lot of these things overlap, and they're talking about the changing environment, both economically, housing, and those type of things, work with the remote access. I would say the master plan should definitely take into consideration the fact that obviously everything is moving forward. I think the pandemic put us 5 to 8 years ahead of where we would have been anyway in terms of how people work,
Yeah.
and how they commute. But we've also seen over the last 18 months, both from my career and otherwise, is these things are starting to roll back a bit now.
Yep.
So like my job, it was full remote, then it was 3 days a month. I'm at 11 days a month now, and they're saying in September we're going to 50%. So while it's important to look at the changes that we're all aware of, post-pandemic, I think the master plan should also include that some of these things are here to stay, and there'll be a gradual move back to that. We'll never go back to a full commuter-based workforce, but I think there is some need to look at some of these things that are already rolling back, and we're getting back to, the traffic that we're all seeing in 2019 before that.
Tell me
so
about it.
good to consider the changes that have been brought about with the pandemic and other things, but also don't be too narrowly focused that it's like everyone's going to work from home and everyone's going to do this. Keep in mind the fact that it'll ultimately be level off somewhere. The pendulum will come back in the middle somewhere where it's a little bit of both.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. And just by way of explanation, and it was noted earlier by Meg in one of the slides, and this kind of harps back to Mrs. Lombardi earlier. We have, in fact, as a council, in the town, purchased upwards of approximately 200 acres of open space, including Schmidt's Farm, like John was talking about. And one of the main reasons why we did that, and one of the main reasons why these open spaces need to be added into a prioritized list of things on the master plan, is because originally these properties were priced out as developments. So they actually went and pre-did a pricing based on what that property would have been if it were developed, both Schmidt's Farm and up off of Maple Street, Maplegate. So I completely agree with my council and the rest of the community in purchasing these properties in order to help, A, mitigate overdevelopment, and B, maintain the open space. There are no real, and Meg, you have anything else you want to throw out there?
No, just still throwing out the question if anyone has thoughts on accessibility for our open spaces and any priorities for that. Through open space and recreation plan, that was one of the main things that came out of the plan, and the feedback that we got through our survey with the community was what a priority this should be for the town. So now that we know that is a priority, would love to hear from people's thoughts on which spaces we should actually prioritize so we can start working and setting actual plans to move forward. For some context, we do actually have a brand new accessibility committee within the town that is looking at open spaces as well. So that had their first meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe. And so it's something that we're definitely making progress on as a town and focusing on. So if anyone has thoughts on what they'd like to see for accessibility, we'd love to hear.
Thank you, Meg. So with that, I'll pass it over to Janelle for any land use and zoning questions to the public for input.
All right, I'd love to hear folks' thoughts on question number 2, or 1, if you have any magic ideas about how to balance development while maintaining our character. But number 2, what areas in Franklin do you think could benefit most from reimagining for us to take a look at, and why?
Anyone in the audience? I'll go to the audience first with that question. So the question is, what areas in Franklin could benefit the most from reimagining their current land use, And how might these adjustments positively impact the people of Franklin? Anyone in the audience want to tackle this question? And then I'll take it out to Zoom. Anyone in Zoom land? I don't see. I think everyone's out celebrating Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
As expected.
Have to think about it.
That's a big question. I think we're gonna have to save this question for,
I think it will come up again and again and again.
Well, we will be having some outreach meetings
Oh,
and
we
listening
have a hand.
meetings. Oh, we've got one. We'll listen to Mark, but I just want to say we will be having outreach meetings and listening meetings for our committee, so you have time to think about it.
Mark?
Here, Mark says.
Yeah, I'm sorry to speak up again,
No.
but Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. I think one of the things that comes to mind here about responsible development is to develop, to encourage further development in areas where we have services and capabilities. So I'm thinking more of the development like we've seen recently on East Central Street close to town. Maybe more development on some of the blocks right in the downtown area. I think was mentioned earlier that some of those areas that are zoned right now that would exclude residential could be changed so that there could be more residential. I would think that if we're going to see large development projects going up, we're better off having them in the downtown. In my opinion, we're better off having them in the downtown, walkable distance to the downtown area, than we are having them out in the middle of Grove Street, where we're just creating more of a transportation nightmare for people to try to get in closer to where services and shopping and capabilities and nightlife are happening. So. Yeah, and maybe the use of, Kobe brought it up earlier, the use of accessory dwelling units could also be helpful more in the train station area, downtown area, rather than further out, for example. But anywhere is probably another way to get at the affordable piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Gino, comment?
Just to follow up on that, Glenn mentioned just a little while ago about how the town purchased Schmitz Farm and Maple Hill. And so there's not going to be housing there where it would be car dependent and far from everything. Instead, there's development going on close to downtown and more things proposed that would be walkable to downtown, and that's the kind of balance I think we're trying to find here.
Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest concern I'm hearing tonight about the development really boils down to what's referred to as a friendly 40B that's been proposed over on Grove Street, for anyone who hasn't heard about it. It is a fairly significant project. It is in a state-approved project since it's a 40B. It has come across our desk. Many of the councilors aren't keen on it, and I'm not keen on it simply because it's on, speaking of zoning, it is actually proposed to go onto an existing industrial zone. So it's definitely something that we need to be careful about, because for as much as we need the housing, it would be a detriment to the community to lose very valuable zoning area. Now, I know there's been discussion that that particular zone isn't really too developable, so something's better than nothing, but it's something we have to think about in the future. Thank you. Anyone else out in Zoom land? All right. So we'll move on to Gino and sustainability. Any questions, any specific question that you want to pose?
I think just the general first question, how best to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, or any of those three really, but start with that one at least. Just wide open.
So I'll take it to the audience in the chamber tonight. Any thoughts or opinions on how to best reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
And I'll just start off by saying that the town has already created a great foundation to build on that. The town has taken lots of steps, both the buildings and with the town vehicles that are transitioning to electric, and charging stations have been provided and such. But so it's solar. Town gets the majority of its electricity from solar farm. So we already have done many great things, and we want to build on that.
Mark, again, go ahead.
Yes, Mark Minichelli. I think you know my address by now.
We do.
A couple of comments on this. First of all, I would encourage, maybe we can encourage more of the town community to check out the Energize Franklin website, energizefranklin.org. It's a relatively new website. It's been up and running for a little over a year now, and it's a great place to educate people about things that they can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce carbon footprints. I'd also like to make the point that we have laws on the books right now to try to help on this that are not being enforced, and maybe residents don't know about it and don't realize the impact. But idling a car in the morning to warm it up before driving it someplace, it's one of the big contributors. When you sum it all together, all of the cars that are sitting in driveways not doing anything, but idling for minutes and minutes on end, that's things like this that are already on the books that we're not enforcing, that we maybe should be communicating better to residents, are I think, some easy things that we can do to start to address this topic. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate your time again. Anyone else in regards to sustainability and how to best reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Anyone else? Is that another hand, or is that just Mark still? Okay. All right. Looks like we've posed as many questions as we can and got as many responses as we could for the evening. So I think, Amy, I'll throw it over to you for any last thoughts on moving forward.
I think that it's great turnout tonight. I think everyone just kind of follow our social media for future meetings. I know that they're talking about one in March 23rd, another kind of public outreach, informative meeting at Dean College. We just kind of have to nail down some times for that. There's also talk about being at the farmers market. I know previously there's been a committee there as well, so just kind of keep following social media and the website to keep up to date with the meeting so that we can have more participants become involved with the master plan.
Tom, you had a question, sir?
Yeah, just a quick question regarding social media and the town website. I kind of hesitate to say this because I'll probably reveal my age, but not everyone is on social media. So my question, I guess, is does the social media, what is being put out on social media, does it mirror what's being put on the town website?
Okay.
I think it does. There's posters of all the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the town website as well. So they generally just go out. If you sign up.
Yeah,
for
if
your,
you sign up for the
yeah,
email.
so I mean, I think you can get it that way too.
There are several avenues. In regards, and speaking as the former communications liaison for the council, one of the things that we as the town are restricted to doing is how far we can actually reach out to the public. We can provide various avenues for people to gain access to the information. But of course, due to limited resources and time, it's almost impossible to get everything that we have out extensively. So I think the website is probably, as it's been mentioned tonight, still our #1 source and resource for people to access information. And the first thing that pops up on the town's website, as soon as you go to the main page, there's a little pop-up that says, would you like to have an email? And those emails can be specific. You can actually set up your account so that you receive emails or information for specific committees, council, etc., or all of them. And Twitter, Facebook, and each department has its own Facebook account as well. So it's a very useful, handy resource. And of course, Steve Sherlock, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, is also yet another wonderful secondary resource who's been around for as long as I've been around. So another wonderful thing. Jill, from Barrett, any last comments in regards to what you've heard tonight from the public in general and your next steps?
Yep, thank you, Glenn. Mike, it was a pleasure hearing from the public. I'm glad there's so many people engaged, and I know there's even more people who maybe weren't able to make it tonight, but the committee's reaching out to and more to come. As Amy said, there's something in the works for March 23rd, in person at Dean College. We're really looking forward to that. And I'm just delighted, along with Beta Group, to be working with the town of Franklin on this project and supporting town staff and the master plan committee. Thank you to the public, and just keep, I guess, spreading the word, getting more people involved. And yeah, just great appreciation for all the efforts so far, and more good stuff to come.
Jill, I want to thank you and everyone over at Barrett and Jeff over at Beta for your time tonight, taking Valentine's Day off to come in and listen to us talk more about master plan. It's your efforts are much appreciated. To the planning department, thank you for your efforts as well. To the public and the audience at large, for those who came out tonight and gave their feedback, thank you so much for your feedback. This is an ongoing effort. We will be having yet again another open house at Dean College on March 23rd. There will be more to follow in regards to that, specifically the time and location. So stay tuned, and we will get that information. I think what I'll do at this time is throw it out to the members of the committee if they have any last comments, questions, or statements prior to adjourning.
Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
Not, well, I was just gonna say, and boy, who else?
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Bruce is online, so we have to do a roll call vote.
Bruce.
Yes.
Meg.
Yes.
Gino.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Janelle.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Erin.
Yes.
This is fun. I'm going fast. Ken.
Sure.
You can say no. We're already.
It's
we
non-debatable.
have enough yeses anyway. Clerk, vice chair is absent
Absent.
now.
Yep.
Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Much
you.
appreciated.